Every creature sharing this planet with us spent millions of years being shaped by it. Fish refined their gills, birds hollowed their bones, polar bears built insulation thick enough to sleep through Arctic winters. Each species arrived at a kind of harmony with the environment that produced it. Then, there's us. We blister under our own star. Our spines deteriorate under the weight of simply standing. We deliver children in a process so hazardous it has killed human mothers at rates no other mammal comes close to matching. And uniquely among all living things, we are the only species that looked around at the world it came from and developed a persistent, nagging sense that something doesn't fit. What if that feeling isn't irrational? What if we genuinely aren't from here? The sun is trying to kill you. Step outside on a clear afternoon. Within 15 minutes, unprotected human skin begins to redden, then blister, then peel. It's worth pausing on how strange this actually is. Lizards bask in direct sunlight indefinitely. Horses, elephants, and dogs spend entire lifetimes under the same star without issue. Their bodies, their pigmentation, their coats, their scales are calibrated for it. Ours, apparently, are not. We had to synthesize a chemical compound and apply it to our own bodies simply to exist comfortably outdoors. No other species required that workaround. The back problem isn't individual. It's architectural. Roughly 80% of humans will experience significant chronic back pain during their lifetime. When 4 out of 5 members of a species share the same structural complaint, individual lifestyle stops being a useful explanation. You have to look at the design. The human spine is essentially a horizontal load-bearing structure that evolution repurposed for vertical use. The intervertebral discs compress under gravitational forces in ways they were never engineered to absorb. Other upright animals, ostriches, kangaroos, don't share this vulnerability because their bodies were built for bipedalism from the start. Ours were converted. Childbirth, a process that shouldn't work this badly. Human birth is measurably the most dangerous delivery process of any mammal on Earth. Infant skulls are so large relative to the maternal birth canal that passage is genuinely precarious. Prior to modern obstetrics, dying in childbirth was among the most common causes of female mortality throughout human history. A mare delivers a foal in roughly 30 minutes. The foal stands and walks within the hour. A human newborn cannot support its own head for months and remains functionally dependent for years, longer than any other creature alive. An immune system fighting the wrong things. Approximately 30% of the global population suffers from some form of allergy. That means the biological defense system, whose entire purpose is protecting you, regularly mobilizes against pollen, dust, certain foods, and animal dander, none of which pose any real threat. Either evolution produced a significant miscalculation, or the immune system is calibrated for an environment different from the one we're actually living in. The knowledge of death. Here is the genuinely strange one. No other animal on Earth appears to comprehend its own mortality in the way we do. Your dog does not lie awake at night grappling with what non-existence means. Dolphins don't develop philosophical frameworks to manage the terror of impermanence. Elephants, for all their documented grief behaviors, have not organized civilizations around answering the question of what comes after death. We have. Every culture in human history has constructed religious systems, burial rituals, philosophical traditions, and architectural monuments largely in response to the awareness that we will, at some point, cease to exist. The question is, what survival advantage does existential dread actually confer? For most of human history, this consciousness has been as likely to drive people toward despair and conflict as toward any constructive outcome. It looks less like an evolved trait and more like a glitch, a species perceptive enough to recognize that something is wrong, but unable to locate exactly what. We are not part of the ecosystem, we're dismantling it. Every other species participates in its environment's closed loop. Predators regulate prey. Prey regulates vegetation. Decomposers return nutrients to the soil. It's a self-correcting system, and every organism within it plays an assigned role. We don't. We deforest, we contaminate watersheds, we alter the atmospheric chemistry of the entire planet. We have pushed thousands of species to extinction and show no sign of decelerating. This is precisely the behavior you'd expect from something that was placed into an ecosystem it didn't evolve alongside. Something that never absorbed the unwritten rules because those rules were never written for it. In 1973, Francis Crick, the Nobel laureate who helped decode the structure of DNA, one of the most consequential scientific minds of the 20th century, published a paper alongside chemist Leslie Orgel proposing what he called directed panspermia, the hypothesis that life on Earth was deliberately seeded here by an intelligent civilization from elsewhere in the galaxy. This was not a fringe scientist speculating at the edges of credibility. This was the man who helped unravel the molecular architecture of life itself, looking at that same architecture and concluding that its origin story didn't fully hold together. The timing does give pause. Life appeared on Earth approximately 3.8 billion years ago on a planet that is itself only 4.5 billion years old. Complex organic chemistry emerged roughly 700 million years after Earth's formation, a period when the planet was still cooling from its molten early state and being regularly struck by asteroids. In geological terms, that's extraordinarily fast. In 1969, the Murchison meteorite struck southeastern Australia. When analyzed, it contained more than 90 distinct amino acids, including some identical to those found in every living organism on Earth. Organic chemistry riding through interstellar space on a rock. We also know that life is more durable than we once assumed. Tardigrades, microscopic organisms with a biology unlike anything else, have survived exposure to the vacuum of space, cosmic radiation, and temperatures approaching absolute zero. When an Israeli lunar lander carrying tardigrades crashed on the moon in 2019, scientists believe some specimens may remain viable on the surface to this day. Life doesn't just exist on Earth, it travels.
To be fair, mainstream biology offers a coherent counter-narrative to all of this, and it deserves honest engagement. It's called evolutionary mismatch, the idea that many of our physiological problems stem not from alien origin, but from the speed of environmental change outpacing biological adaptation. Back pain? Upright walking only began around 6 million years ago, which sounds ancient but is a geological eye blink for skeletal restructuring. The spine is still mid-revision. Sunburn? Our ancestors lost body hair, likely to enable efficient sweating during long-distance pursuit across open savanna. The trade-off was UV vulnerability. We became the most effective endurance hunters in the animal kingdom. Sunburn was the cost. Childbirth complications? Brains expanded faster than pelvises could safely accommodate. Evolution was simultaneously selecting for intelligence and bipedalism, and the geometry simply didn't reconcile cleanly. We evolved in small groups where resources appeared functionally unlimited. Our brains are optimized for short-horizon survival decisions, not planetary stewardship. We're not invaders, we're an animal that accumulated unprecedented power before its own cognitive architecture could keep pace. These explanations are substantive. Most researchers find them convincing.
The one thing mismatch theory struggles with? Even granting all of the above, one problem remains: the pace. Dolphins have existed for approximately 50 million years. They're intelligent, socially complex, and communicative. In 5 decades of millions of years, they have never produced a single tool. Chimpanzees have been using sticks for roughly 4 million years. The technology has not advanced. We went from sharpened flint to nuclear reactors in 2 million years, from fire to spaceflight in a span that barely registers on evolutionary timescales. 2 centuries ago, there were no railways. 125 years ago, there were no aircraft. 75 years ago, no one had left the atmosphere. 35 years ago, the internet didn't exist. No species in 4 billion years of life on this planet has ever accelerated at anything resembling this rate. Language, cooking, the FOXX2 gene mutation, cumulative cultural transmission. Researchers have proposed all of these as contributing factors, and all of them probably played a role, but none of them, individually or collectively, fully accounts for the sheer velocity of what happened. Science has compelling pieces of the answer. It does not yet have the complete picture. It is almost certainly the case that we are a product of this planet, shaped by the same evolutionary pressures that shaped everything else living here. The evidence for that is substantial, and mismatch theory handles most of the apparent anomalies with reasonable elegance, but almost certainly is not definitively. And when one of the architects of modern genetics looks at the biological record and concludes that something doesn't fully add up, that's not conspiracy. That's a serious scientist applying rigorous skepticism to a question that hasn't yet been fully resolved. The strangeness of our situation remains regardless of which explanation you find more persuasive. We are, by any measure, the most improbable thing this planet has ever produced. We burn under our own sun, erode under our own gravity, and have spent our entire existence staring at the sky with a restlessness we cannot fully explain or fully suppress. If we are from here, we are the strangest outcome of 4 billion years of biological experimentation. And if we're not, then we've been searching for something we can't name across 200,000 years without ever knowing that what we're actually looking for is the way back.